Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Risk with Dr. Naveen Agarwal. Each week, we talk about a topic related to risk management of medical devices in a very casual and informal way. This is not a webinar or lecture. Rather, our goal is to talk about key topics and challenges in a very informal way and share best practices. I'm your host, Naveen Agarwal, and I'm the principal and founder at Achieve, where my personal mission is to help you achieve success in risk management. My guest in this episode is Amit Guru Prasad. He has a lot of experience working in a small startup environment in the medical device industry. And here we are talking about FDA's pre-sub program, where medical device manufacturers can engage with the US FDA for free to get early feedback in their product development process. In this conversation, Amit is offering many practical tips about how to prepare and what kind of questions to ask the FDA to get their feedback and what not to do. We had this discussion in front of a live audience as part of our weekly LinkedIn live audio series. You're about to hear a recording of our conversation. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Well, hello everyone, and welcome once again to our weekly Let's Talk Risk conversation on LinkedIn. So excited to see all of you today. And guys, today we're going to have a slightly different but very interesting conversation. It's not directly related to risk, but as risk practitioners, I believe we should have a good understanding of this topic and how it presents an excellent opportunity for us to actually contribute to accelerating product innovation and regulatory approval. So we'll have a talk about that with my guest today, Amit Guru Prasad. Without further ado then, guys, I'm really excited to welcome Amit Guru Prasad today. Amit, how are you?
Good, doing well. Thanks for having me on, Naveen. Happy Friday to everyone. And looking forward to having this discussion.
Awesome, Amit. So why don't we start by just having you introduce yourself briefly to our audience today. I know your training is in biomedical engineering, and I know a lot of people have that training. And particularly, I'm curious to know what got you into the quality regulatory world and how you got to be working with FDA so directly.
Yeah. So, I actually originally started off working in R&D as a product development engineer in the orthodontic industry. And, throughout my time there, I got more heavily involved on the quality regulatory side of things. Not for the best reasons, because it was due to a remediation project. Mm-hmm. But, throughout that project and a few other projects of understanding, the principles of quality control, design quality, as well as design controls, and, understanding how regulatory and other departments are really intertwined with R&D and quality as well. So I really saw that quality was, the backbone of really any medical device company or med tech company. And, their hands are really in everyone's business in a good way. So, throughout my time there, I kind of just understood the value of quality and wanted to get more experience in there. So for the past, decade or so, I've actually been in quality assurance, design quality, and regulatory affairs side of things in the industry.
That's really awesome. And how did you get to start working with FDA more directly?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it has to actually do with the size of the company from my experience, working for startups and, being a part of that startup environment and really interacting with the FDA at an early stage gave, those smaller stage companies a lot of benefits and understanding, what the product development pathway is, what the regulatory pathway is, and how can it really save time and money with, really interacting with the FDA at an early stage and, not only interacting, but developing a relationship with them. And I guess really understanding, what their thought process is to really promote safety and efficacy of devices.
Great. So what you're saying is that when you work in a small startup environment, you have to do all of this yourself. It doesn't mean that you have a separate group taking care of it. So learn by doing. And that's actually a lot of people in our audience. I know many of them are in the small startup environment. So I'm hoping that they will also be able to share their experience. So, Amit, let's get into this. We're going to talk about the pre-sub program. And, I'll be the first one to admit that I'm not a regulatory guy. And some of these terms, they are just so confusing to me. So I've also heard something like a Q-sub. So set the stage right. Is this the same thing? Is pre-sub the same as Q-sub? Is it different?
Yeah, so actually, technically the guidance that the FDA has on their website is called the Q-sub program.
Mm-hmm.
And pre-submissions actually fall under the umbrella of a Q-submission. So there are actually a variety of different types of Q-subs you can do. And pre-submission is one of those types. You can actually do study risk determination as another example. That's another type of Q-sub that falls under that category. And there are about, I think, 5 or 6 other type of topics you can discuss that are not pre-subs that fall under that Q-sub umbrella.
Okay, so the Q-sub is the big bubble and pre-sub is a small bubble inside. I'm talking about very common sense way of thinking about it. Okay, great. So if we have set this up, you mentioned something, risk determination, and that got me really interested because we talk about risk here. Can you briefly explain what that risk determination is as part of Q-sub?
Yeah, so just to kind of go into that process, within the pre-sub program, how it really works is that you really lay out all your cards to the FDA. Now, your device description, technology characteristics, your regulatory strategy or your version of it, and understanding what your predicate products may be. So you're kind of giving them all this information to the point where they need to understand the device or product just as well as you do. And in terms of risk, you kind of understand where that product may fall in terms of determination of classification. Is it a class 1 device? Is it a class 1 or class 2 510K exempt device? Is it a class 2 device that needs 510K? So from that angle, you can actually get a lot of valuable information or insights from the FDA on what your regulatory pathway is when it comes to risk and how that really impacts not only the risk of the product, but also how you set up your quality systems and what really needs to be implemented in the long run.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say here is that we have to do a lot of preparation ourselves, and that's where I think risk practitioners could have a role to play, where we are helping our team understand the risks involved, how to present them, how to have a conversation about unanswered questions. So can you share like an example from your work that you worked on and how you went about preparing for the pre-sub meeting with the FDA? What all went in there? Can you share some examples with us?
Yeah, sure. And just to kind of point this out as well, the pre-submission program is actually is a free program with the FDA, so it actually bears no cost. So it's I think that's an important factor for a lot of companies, especially smaller companies. But you get a lot of valuable insights because of the process, and you might as well take advantage of it. But an example I would give is an ophthalmic imaging system I worked on in the past, and this system consisted of a hardware side as well as a software side. So what we want to do as a team, not only from a quality regulatory perspective, but also getting product development involved as well, is to kind of really understand three aspects from the FDA. We wanted to understand the regulatory pathway, depending on our claims and intended use and indications for use. Really understand our testing plan and our testing matrix. Are we following the right standards? Are we following the most up-to-date standards in accordance with FDA consensus standards? Is there something better that we can do in terms of a standard that's more up-to-date that we haven't figured out? And then lastly would be the clinical data plan. If there were to be clinical data that needs to be in the submission, is just the proper kind of setup? Do we have our principles of operation really laid out, and whether you even need a clinical study or not? So these are a lot of aspects you can really trickle down and ask the FDA, and it's all fair game.
Mm-hmm. So in this particular example, Amit, can you share how long it took you guys to prepare for this conversation with the FDA, and at what point in the product development process you decided to engage with the FDA? Can you share any details about that?
Yeah. So you can actually do multiple pre-subs. You're not, you don't have to do one and then you're done. You can actually do one prior to, the inception of the product itself, really understanding what goes into the development of it. And you can do one prior to design freeze when in accordance with design controls and understanding, we have really everything in place. Do we have all the proper, the sample size? Do we have, our human factors study down? So, the size of the pre-sub really depends on how much information you need. So I guess in the beginning of product development, you'll probably have a lot more questions to ask the FDA. depending on the topics, than later in the process. So it's more of a strategy more than anything, and you can actually do multiple pre-subs to get the, to really get the best information from the FDA.
Mm-hmm. But of course, we also don't want to, have too many meetings and waste resources on both ends. So in this particular case, Amit, can you share, some elements of your strategy? How did you plan on having these conversations, and at what point did you decide to have those conversations?
Yeah. So it really started from the intended use of the product, and based on that, what we knew confidently versus what we didn't know. And I think a big part of it was really understanding what our predicate product was. What are we comparing our device to in terms of substantial equivalence, and are we on the right pathway to use that product as a predicate product?
Okay.
So I think a big part. That is the whole purpose of a 510(k), right? So you're trying to establish substantial equivalence. So in that regard, I think that was one of the biggest aspects.
But you would have done some pre-work to really understand the scope of this conversation. You just cannot show up without anything, right? That's what I'm trying to kind of understand. Like, to what level of preparation you need to have to be able to show up for a productive conversation. And some of the, maybe some examples of questions you should not be asking. So how can we best prepare?
Yeah. I think the best way to really prepare this is to look at it as a regulatory submission. So if you look at it as a 510(k) submission or a PMA or de novo, this pre-submission will help you develop that submission down the road. So you want to act as if this is a more of an informal type of regulatory submission, but a lot of that content that you develop can be easily transferred over to the submission you plan to submit down the road. So in that case, a lot of these questions are actually more of an art than a science. I've really learned, and to understand what the FDA, how they think in a certain process. So, for example, clinical studies. If you ask a pretty open question about, do we need a clinical study for this product? They're going to say yes. They're going to say, we want XYZ data points for this because they want to really understand safety and efficacy from a clinical standpoint. But if you describe your product in a way, or your technology in a way, by really looking at the risk of the product and the intended use of the product, you can actually ask them the opposite and saying, based on our technology, based on our labeling, does the FDA or the agency concur that a clinical study is not needed, right? Based on our use case. So things like that are more of something that you kind of learn more from experience more than anything, but that's just an example I can give.
I see. Great. Now, so before I start inviting our colleagues here for our conversation, Amit, I have one last question. In this example of this ophthalmic system that you worked on, looking back, if you were to look back and say, hey, there are some things that we could have done better in our conversations with the FDA, can you share a few of those?
I would say, yeah. I guess I would say kind of doing a more of a proper regulatory due diligence on predicate products with something, because the way the pre-sub meeting works is that, you ask these questions and they give you feedback, and then you have the ability to set up a 1-hour meeting with the FDA.
Okay.
So that 1 hour, it's to the point where, you need to really lay out that 60 minutes, understand what goes into it. So the more information or the more research or due diligence you do, is the less they have to provide for you. So taking up that 60 minutes is really important to understand how it's breaking down.
And I would also imagine that you have to know what kind of questions are really critical for you to get answered. And really you have to think about your product development, your launch, your final approval. And you have to do the work to figure out what is missing and what is most critical for you to get some feedback on. We are not going to say yes. We're not going to look for yes or no questions, right? I think that's what I'm sensing from your description here. Is that pretty correct?
Right. Yes. I would say so. Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. I think this is a perfect time to start inviting our colleagues here to participate in this discussion. I believe many of you might have even more direct experience, broad experience working on these types of projects and engaging with the FDA. What are some of the things that you have come across that have worked for you? What are some of the challenges that you have faced? Floor is open. And if you have any other questions also, that's fine. we are all here to discuss these topics. So, Phil, you are requesting to speak. I'm going to try to bring you up here. And guys, you don't have to wait for your turn. Just indicate to me that you want to participate in this conversation, and I'll bring you on this virtual stage as soon as I can. So, Rafael, you are on. So please unmute your mic and share what you have in mind.
Yeah, I think I can actually speak from real experience to the value of a pre-sub. It goes back to my first 510K about 9 years ago when pre-sub, to my knowledge, wasn't an option. We had a few rounds and finally got on the phone with the FDA, and let's just say that particular conversation was so contentious, the CEO resorted to some name-calling, that ultimately the QA/RA consultant had to smooth over. If we'd had a pre-sub with that thing, we might have known a lot more and avoided that whole mess. So that's the value of a pre-sub. And when I heard about it, I was like, yeah, if you can get a pre-sub, do it. Mm-hmm. You're going to learn more, and you're going to save yourself a lot of heartache and a lot of effort and a lot of smoothing over that from people at the top who are understandably frustrated because there's a lot of money on the line, and they're trying to recoup it and run a business, and it's an impediment. So this is one way to get around it.
Great point. Thank you for sharing that, Rafael. Phil, you are next. Please unmute your mic and share what you have in mind.
Thank you, Navien. And to Emmett's point, absolutely agree that working for a startup, which is what I'm doing right now, I work for MediView. We do augmented reality and for the medical realm, and have found that being also a very new device, as we've been lucky, we've had a good relationship with FDA to kind of walk us through the steps and help bring the system to market. But in contrast, I've worked for a consultancy, I work for other manufacturers, and generally those companies, those entities have a ton of people to help with the situation, with the growing, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm fortunate to be within the company that I am now. We have a dedicated regulatory specialist, but also a close relationship with the FDA also, which helps tremendously to bring the device to market.
That's great. That's good to hear. And in a small startup, again, we keep coming back to it because the resources are so limited. So you may have to learn how to do it yourself. I think the point I want to emphasize here is that this is the value of a conversation like this. We can understand the basic concepts and then reach out to people. Again, we can network with people on this forum and in our community to get more advice. So I would strongly recommend that we take advantage of this. Guys, floor is open. So please participate in this conversation. If you don't want to speak up, you can also type up a comment on this event page, and or maybe send me a direct message if you want, and I'll bring that for discussion in this session. Okay, with that, Ed, you are requesting to speak. Here you are, Ed. Please unmute your mic and share what you have in mind.
Okay, Naveen, can you hear me okay? Yes,
I can hear you loud and clear, Ed. Go ahead.
I'm on my iPad in my car today, so a little bit different environment. I've been around a long time. You all know that. Back in 1990, I was in the industry just about 2 years at that point. And in 1990, you could not contact the FDA except by fax. I don't know if there's anybody in here old enough to remember fax machines, but that's how you submitted your questions to the FDA. And then you might get a response, but they didn't have to. This whole world of pre-sub is so different from what the FDA used to be. And it's a really great advantage for companies to learn a lot about what they're expecting. They're a much more open agency today than they were. So please, please, please take advantage of the opportunity to discuss things with the FDA. And there's some conferences that the FDA participates in. There's a MedCon conference that I was just at a few weeks ago. There's one for combination products, and I saw Susan Needle was in here a while ago. At those conferences, FDA will talk to you one-on-one, and there's no negatives for that. So you can directly talk to the people face-to-face right in the same room, just like you can in some of the pre-subs. And it's just so much different, and it saves you time and money.
Yeah.
Because you don't waste time doing something that the FDA says, nope, that's not the way we want you to do it.
Yeah.
So please take advantage of this.
Excellent point, Ed. And one of the key points to highlight here is that, we may have these notions about FDA as a big agency, and we might be kind of intimidated by that or scared by that. But at the end of the day, there are people, and we can build these people relationships in these conferences, other forums. And let's keep in mind that FDA also has a mutual interest in bringing safe and innovative devices in the market. So in some ways, we are playing on the same team in the pre-market phase. So
let me say one more thing.
Go ahead, Ed.
There's an office called DICE that the FDA has, Division of Industry and Consumer Education. And you can call them, and some of your basic questions, they will find answers for you and get that back to you or connect you directly with the expert. So they're doing all kinds of things to improve their communication with the industry. That's just another option. I work with a lot of the people in Dyson and doing training and everything. I was with one this week, and she was an expert in IVDs. And so different products, they have expertise in the office, and they're so much interested in communicating with you. DICE also has short video education themes, and then there's the READY conference that's coming up, REDI, which is an FDA sponsored, and there's a track for medical devices, there's one for drugs, and there's one for biologics.
Yeah.
And they're a couple of day conference, so look that one up and take advantage of that as well.
Excellent suggestion. And what I will do, guys, I'll post a link to DICE and the upcoming READY conference on this event page. You can access that. Christy, you are on. Please unmute your mic and share what you have in mind.
Hi, friends. So Ed and I were actually together at MedCon a couple weeks ago, and Jeff Shern came on and was talking about the pre-sub program, and I just wanted to share some changes of vision that he shared, which is not ready for prime time in any way, but the FDA is redoing and rethinking, restructuring their whole pre-sub program, the whole 510K submission program or pre-market submission program, so that it's not submit a pre-sub, wait 70 days, submit your next one. And it's more of you have access to and ongoing conversations with someone at the agency who's kind of plugged into what you're doing, and you can have more frequent and open dialogue, get your questions answered in more of a real-time scenario. And then by the time you submit your actual pre-market submission, your 510K or your de novo or whatever it is, it can be approved in days because they've been so involved. So he shared that vision, and he basically said, we can't share anything else. We don't know timelines, but this is what we're working to. And I thought that was really encouraging and kind of speaks to the spirit that FDA is trying to get us to embrace.
That makes a lot of sense to me, Christy. And actually what I'm thinking about here is that as we are moving into a world where we have a lot of software, we have a lot of artificial intelligence, machine learning, we have cybersecurity issues. These are like rapidly changing topics, and the field is evolving so fast. It's important for us to have more frequent conversation. I think FDA is also realizing that they need to be a little bit more involved for accelerating product innovation using these technologies. So does that sound about right? Maybe some of that as the driving factor behind this new approach?
I think so. Yeah, I think they're also seeing so many little tiny companies fall into the pre-market valley of death, where like even in the breakthrough program, 10% of products in the breakthrough program make it to market. There's a huge, massive hole that little tiny companies are falling into, and part of it is there's turnover at the FDA, expectations change, regulations change in the middle of a long product development cycle, and that sends companies into these iterations of having to redo testing, and they just run out of money. So I think they're also taking like the commercialization approach and trying to understand what's happening and why are so few products actually surviving to actual commercialization.
Very, very interesting. So, guys, as you can see, our conversations can go in many different directions because we are learning from each other. These are not planned or scripted conversations, and I really, really encourage you to participate in this and share your perspective. And I'm so thankful to Christy, Raphael, Ed, and Phil for coming on and really contributing to this. So this is not about, let me just set this straight for those who may not have attended our sessions in the past. This is not, again, like a straight Q&A type of a discussion. So if you have questions, pending, burning questions about the pre-sub process or how we should engage with the FDA, as you can see, we have so many people in our network and on stage today where you can address that question. So I know we are running short on time, so I have one more sort of thought in my mind here. And Amit, I'm going to start with you, but guys, anyone else on the forum here today, you're welcome to add your thoughts. One topic I want to bring up is PCCP, which is Predetermined Change Control Plan. I heard it's a big deal. And it's, first of all, Amit, to you, is that one of the things that you should consider for a discussion with the FDA in a pre-sub process?
Yes. Yeah. So actually, if you look at how pre-submissions are submitted these days, you can actually do it through the eStar platform online. And on the template, there's up to, there's like 20, 30 topics you can select. And one of those topics is predetermined change control plan. So you can actually click that off as something that you would like to discuss with the FDA.
So why did I bring this up? Because we are working with software a lot, and software goes through a lot of change. If you have these changes planned ahead and you get FDA's buy-in, you can save a lot of time in your post-market activities like 510Ks and maybe new submissions. Raphael, Christy, Ed, Phil, you guys have anything else to add to this? Does it make sense for people to start thinking about PCCPs? I believe software is part of almost every medical device now. I mean, unless it's a consumable, right? It's going to be here. So how do we actually take advantage of this opportunity that we have with the FDA? Raphael, go ahead, please. Raphael, did you want to share something on this? Okay. If not, the floor is open. Christy, Ed, Phil, if you guys want to share something on that, that's I invite you.
I'll go ahead and share a little bit.
Okay, Ed, go ahead.
It's not my area of expertise, but I've been on the fringes, taught a class on risk management this week, and we talked about software. There's a lot of guidance, and it's changing rapidly, and you got to keep up with all the stuff that's being published. And then in the area of AI, I'm working with the International Risk Management Standards Committee right now on developing a machine learning. It's going to be a technical report. It's going to be 24971-2. So we're going to add another manual there. But anyway, where I was going on this, Pat Baird, who's our convener, and I think Pat's spoken here before too, says there's 80 standards and technical reports being developed today on AI. There's no way we're going to keep up with the proliferation here. We've got to find some way, and it's been suggested that AI is one way of tracking AI documents.
Yes.
So,
yes. Yeah,
it's going to be an interesting world, and you got to keep on top of stuff and keep monitoring what's going on in the world. Attend virtual conferences when you can. Just suck in all this information because it's coming at us really fast.
And then we can process this knowledge and information to build our plan for a pre-sub discussion with the FDA, right? I think that is going to be useful. Guys, we are running short on time, so I will give Amit a couple of minutes to just collect his thoughts and share some key takeaways with us. But I'm going to share with you some key announcements. The first one here is that the recording of all these conversations are available on the Let's Talk Risk website. If you want to go back and listen to our prior conversations, which we have close to 50 of them now, you're welcome to go check out the podcast tab on the website. The link is here in the event page. The second announcement is in 2 weeks from now, I will be doing a webinar on post-market safety surveillance. If you're interested in attending, again, there's a lot of information on the website. You can find out and reach out to me if you want more details, if you're interested in that topic. And finally, I invite all of you to engage with us. If you want to be a part of this conversation as a guest speaker, it is open to you. As you can see, it requires no preparation. We don't have to build any slides. We don't have to prepare. There's no script. Just be able to show up and be willing to share your thoughts and build new connections. Reach out to me if you are interested, and we will have a chat. With that, Amit, the floor is yours. If you could please share just 2 or 3 key takeaways from our conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say again that, the pre-submission program is extremely valuable, especially when you're kind of, starting a medical device project and you're trying to get an idea of what it really entails from A to Z to get to that commercialization point. But during the meeting or even during the whole process, I would really focus on 3 things. Really be the regulatory pathway and really inquiring about the claims that you're making for your product. Looking into the testing matrix, in terms of the standards and where you're looking at as well. And then lastly would be the clinical data plan. How are you collecting this data and what is the strategy for that? So I'll leave those 3 remarks.
Thank you so much, Amit. What a great way to close. Those are key important points. Guys, with that, once again, thanks for attending today. Thanks to Amit, Rafael, Christy, Ed, and Phil for being a part of this conversation. I look forward to connecting with you next week, where we're going to have a very interesting conversation about state of the art. This is a tough topic and very important topic for risk management. So my guest, Chris Whelan, has a lot of experience in this area, and we're going to talk about state of the art. The announcement is already out there on LinkedIn. Please show up 11 o'clock next Friday. Thanks again, everybody, and see you again next week. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.